Welcome back to College Football Addiction Playoff Week. We've got Billy Embody here on the Pony Express. SMU, Penn State this week. And Billy, we were just talking. I know you're going up to the game. The vibe's pretty high right now, still around Dallas.
Oh, 100%. I mean, despite SMU, losing in the ACC championship, it's still a season that was unexpected from most people around this program, at least on the outside. And so for SMU to have the season that they've had, there's a lot of people that are very excited about that. Don't get me wrong. And now getting the chance to go up to State College and continue their season, they're going up there with nothing to lose. They're not the ACC champs. They're not a Penn State team that has an enormous amount of pressure on them to win a big game, not just a college football playoff game, but just a big game in general. And you're going against the upstart SMU Mustangs. You're over a touchdown favorite at home, and I mean, even James Franklin was calling for people to come out and support because student tickets hadn't exactly sold that well, with it being the middle back half or so of December up there. But for SMU, they're going in and can just kind of let it fly. They have no pressure on them, and the vibes are high with SMU in the college football playoff.
Do you, before we go too deep into that game, do you think that I don't like to play the moral victory game, and no fan base likes to hear that either, but just the fact that they did come back against Clemson and make it a game, and even Clemson fans would agree, like if that thing goes to overtime, SMU probably wins. And so you kind of lose in not a fluky way, but weird long kickoff. They get the first, they, get the, like,
58-yard, 56-yard field
yeah,
goal.
like,
Yeah.
but it has to feel better than losing by there was a chance that SMU got run out of that thing, and if that's the case, they probably aren't even in the playoff, right? If they lose by 17 or more to Clemson, they probably sneak Alabama in there. And so, like the comeback had to. Like, is there some moral victory you can kind of take from the fight?
Oh yeah, 100%. And not even a moral victory from the standpoint of the coaches being, hey, all right, look at what we did. That was a good effort, guys. They know that they left so many plays on that field. Turnovers early in the game allowed Clemson to start up with that 24/7 halftime lead, 17-point lead that they had, and SMU did not play well offensively in the first half. They had their moments, but they couldn't finish in certain situations. They missed a field goal as well, which if you look back on that game now, was obviously a difference making point in that game. But SMU showed that physically they can play with Clemson, that they're honestly, a better team in a way. Like that their entire season shows that, maybe they're able to pull this one out most of the time if they don't sink their own ship with turnovers. I mean, that's kind of SMU's situation all year is when they play up to their standard, they're going to be among the best teams in the country. And that's just speaking the truth. And they did not do that in the first half against Clemson. And in the second half, SMU got pretty much whatever it wanted against Clemson. So that type of performance in the second half is obviously why they're in the college football playoff. It's why SMU should feel confident that they can beat Penn State if they play up to their standard. But that's something that they're going to have to figure out and not be overwhelmed like they were early in that game against Clemson for a multitude of reasons, whether it be turnovers, whether it be making having a penalty here or there that changed the complexion of field position. All those things that Penn State doesn't do to themselves when it comes to penalties in particular. That's what SMU is going to have to avoid. They're going to have to weather the storm, depending on the weather up there. Maybe figuratively and literally to come out on top. And that's something that maybe playing Clemson and realizing, wow, the gold standard of the ACC, a multi-time national champion program, we went toe to toe with them. We got off the mat and took it to them. Let's be the aggressors in this game and get out on top and make Penn State chase SMU, which would most certainly play into their game plan.
Yeah. I feel like people that maybe the national perception is like teams like Boise State or SMU or even Clemson, like they're just kind of lucky to be there. They're showing up and we'll see what happens. Just knowing and hearing enough from Rhett, like I know that's not the, hey guys, we're just going to have fun, right? In State College at noon on a Saturday. I mean, the mindset from him has to be like, look, people want to talk about our schedule. Like, yeah, Penn State played a couple of good teams close, but who have they been? Like, we're going to win this thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at the end of that SMU Clemson game, the national talking points were kind of exhausted about SMU and maybe, hey, they're just happy to be here. They're, they made a change at quarterback. They've caught fire. No, that you could see what SMU has shown throughout their schedule all year as to why they are one of the better teams in the country and why they deserve to be in the college football playoff. I mean, if they don't make the ACC, I mean, if they don't play the ACC championship, I mean, there's really not even a talking point around SMU outside of, wow, they're undefeated with Kevin Jennings at the helm. Maybe this loss to Clemson galvanizes them and they say, hey, we've got to take care of our own house. And once we do that, we can beat anybody that's left in this college football playoff. And it is a college football playoff that, in my opinion, is wide open. I mean, it really is. You know, anybody could win this thing. And in my opinion, maybe outside of Boise or Arizona State. That's just me talking. But you know, just about anybody can win this thing, and you can get hot. You can play good defense like SMU can. You have a quarterback. You've got an explosive playmaker in Brashard Smith. You've got guys in the trenches on both sides that have shown when they play up to their standard that they can handle a Clemson offensive line with multiple future NFL draft picks, a Clemson defensive line that has multiple future NFL draft picks. I mean, 4 and 5 stars littered all over. That's what Penn State has. Penn State has a top 10 pick coming off the edge in Abdul Carter. They're going to have guys that are going to play in the NFL from their offensive line and others on their defensive line, of course. SMU, the way their scheme is, the way that their guys play, and the motor they usually play with, they've shown they can play with and beat anybody on their schedule. And that's why, I mean, Penn State better be ready to go.
Yeah. You mentioned in that ACC championship, obviously didn't get off to a great start. The turnovers to start the game really set Clemson up well in short yardage situation or short
Field position, yeah.
field position to go score quickly, and they took a big lead. It feels like that would kind of be I don't want to say a nail in the coffin, but it would be tough to pull off another comeback like that on the road at Penn State with a defense that plays pretty well at home. Just the emphasis on starting well for Jennings and the offense and the defense too. But, I think the defense was kind of put in some rough spots. But has there been an emphasis from Rhett on, hey, we're going to start better, we're going to start cleaner?
I felt like for SMU, it all comes down to turnovers. And I know I'm harping, you're beating the horse to death, but SMU, the way they've been throughout this season with Kevin Jennings, they usually start pretty fast. They've kind of dipped a little bit at the end of the year with that, in particular against Clemson, as we saw. But they just have to take care of the ball, and they will find ways to beat Penn State's defense, I think, with some of the speed they have. And if they can figure out a way to maybe run up the middle and make them respect that a little bit, which SMU has done a good job of, and Brashard Smith's pretty tough to tackle, that's going to be the key to starting fast. And I've said this, and I've kind of hammered this on, covering this team, is if they can establish the ground game early with Brashard Smith and get him to hit some of those 7, 8, 9, 10-yard runs that they've been able to get from him a lot this season, they get those in the first half, and you see Penn State having to, sell out and stop the run, which a lot of teams have started to do more so against SMU. They're going to find ways to get Matthew Hibner, who's been on a heater, the ball, their tight end transfer from Michigan. They're going to find ways to get to the edge with guys like Roderick Daniels from the slot, maybe running some jet sweeps, or their wide receivers on the outside have been playing pretty well. So there are a lot of things that this offense can do and throw at you. The biggest thing is they've got to get out of their own way when it comes to penalties and turnovers. And if they do that, I mean, you look at what Oregon did and the way that they run their offense. I'm sure Rhett Lashley is going to be studying that tape and has been. They know what they have in Kevin Jennings. They know some of the things that he does. He ran into some moments that he did not handle well early in the game, and SMU as a whole offensively didn't. When this defense is put into situations that are better with field position and not being set up on SMU's own 34 and 38 yard line, they make you drive the whole length of the field. That's something that Penn State's offense, it's not necessarily built to do the whole explosive play thing. So they're coming off their best game of the season, in my opinion, against Oregon. So that's something to watch. But the whole thing with the offense is trying to stay out of your own way, because they've got a lot of speed and ability to make big plays.
Yeah, I was looking at the thinking through the Oregon game and thinking, man, if that's not the recipe to go after Penn State's defense, which you think about Penn State being, oh, they held Ohio State down, or which maybe Ohio State holds itself down some when you watch that Michigan game, but you do look at some of the similarities with the way that we talked about this a few weeks ago. The similarities between the way that South Carolina attacked and could SMU do some of those things, and kind of the way Oregon attacks, which again they're a 13-0 team that everybody would like to be in their position, and it's hard to replicate what an Oregon offense does with some of the talent they have out at wideout. But I do kind of think the offenses move somewhat similarly, and if Rhett can kind of pick some of that up, they'd be in pretty good shape. You mentioned the defense. I think what was the most underrated aspect of the SMU comeback in the ACC championship game was it felt like their defensive backs made play after play after play after play. And Jennings gets a lot of spotlight, deservedly so. The offense, obviously, you got to score points to come back. But I thought the way the defensive backs and the secondary played in just completely erasing some of those superstar freshmen for Clemson, no windows for Cade to throw in. Like everything was a razor tight window, and most of the time the guys were getting pass breakups there. I thought the secondary played extremely well in the second half, and really was the key to the comeback. If Cade completes a few of those passes, they run the clock out. Like SMU doesn't even have a chance to come back. And so I look for that unit, and want to get your thoughts defensively, what they can do. I look for that unit to be pretty good on Saturday too.
Yeah, the thing about the corners for SMU, and look, Bryant Wesco made some big plays. Some of those Clemson guys, were able to get theirs. But SMU is missing Jalen Davis Robinson, who's got a ton of speed, and they basically had to play two corners the entire game. And that is tough to do when you have to cover some of those gazelles that Clemson has. Penn State has some good receivers. They do not have, at least in my opinion, and I mean, I don't think it's controversial to say this, a wide receiver group that is going to scare a ton of people. They have one of, if not the best tight end in the country in Tyler Warren. They have an explosive playmaker in Singleton back there at running back, but their wide receiver group has kind of been up and down. So SMU's cornerbacks, SMU's safeties, if they can all play fundamentally sound, avoid giving up big explosives, this front seven, I mean, all year long, they've been, for the most part, able to control the line of scrimmage. Boston College is the team that really had the most success against that group, and that was without their star defender, Elijah Roberts, up front. If SMU can control that line of scrimmage, if they make Drew Aller beat them, that is the recipe for success. And that starts with starting fast offensively. And with SMU's defense, they kind of feed off that. If the offense can get a field goal, get 7 points to start, they've kind of been able to feed off of that. You look back at that Louisville game, a really good football game, but SMU's defense got confident early. They had some moments. The third quarter was tough for them in that game where Louisville came back and tied it, but SMU was able to swing the knockout blow, and they locked in and held them scoreless. I believe they were scoreless in that final fourth quarter. And that's kind of the recipe for SMU's success is if the defense can start out playing with confidence, being put in good positions to make them earn every step of the way, that plays into their hands. And from there, I mean, who knows? It's going to be cold on Saturday. I think that is something to watch. We'll see if weather becomes a factor. I know there's snow on the ground in State College today, but if SMU can just find ways to make this kind of a game where Penn State's kind of always trying to swing back at SMU, that is a good situation for Rhett Lash's Mustangs.
Yeah, being able to throw that first punch is a big deal. Is there a matchup that you like the most on SMU's side, something you think they can exploit and take advantage of?
Yeah, I think their speed with Brashard Smith. SMU's been able to run the ball against some pretty good fronts all year. I mean, Dozier Ezaraku, against Boston College, SMU was still able to run the ball effectively, and they kind of stuck with it pretty well. They faced some other really talented fronts with size and speed and athleticism. I mean, shoot, I don't have the stats up in front of me anymore, but they were creeping in on 200 yards rushing against Clemson. So they put up some numbers, and that was basically without SMU showing up in that first quarter offensively. So there's a lot of things that I like about this matchup on both sides of the ball for SMU, just like Penn State likes some of the matchups. I'm sure they are really elaborate with what they do offensively. A lot of shifts, motions. You'll see some wildcat. You'll see some guys throw passes that maybe shouldn't. I believe it's Tyler Warren that was a former high school quarterback. So there's a lot of different things that they'll throw at you. And actually, their offensive coordinator was at Kansas when they won 10 games last year. And so he's been kind of a really nice addition from a standpoint of presenting a bunch of different things that defenses have to account for. There's going to be a lot of checks that SMU is going to have to bring to the table. But the thing for me is Brashard Smith's speed. Having that bye week basically after the ACC championship to maybe get him a little, greased up and ready to go. This is the type of game where his toughness, his ability to fall forward on top of just his overall speed, I think SMU is going to be able to do some fun things with him and get them, moving in the right direction offensively. I would, if SMU wins this game, it wouldn't shock me if Brashard Smith had over 150 yards of total offense.
It's really early in the week, and so I won't hold you to anything real solid here. But do you think they can pull the upset? Where are you leaning on this? Where's your head, heart, all the things?
Yeah, my head goes back and forth because there is so much pressure on James Franklin and Penn State. I mean, there's not any. If anyone on Penn State's side of covering this or being a fan tells you otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. They're telling themselves some different things, but huge amount of pressure on James Franklin and the Nittany Lions. I think there's so much that maybe that does play a little bit of a factor. And on SMU side of things, they're going up there. It's cold. I mean, it's not a scenario where SMU is maybe played too well in the cold at times, but they got better as that game in Charlotte went on, and it was chilly and it was kind of muggy and it was all those things in Charlotte. But I think my head kind of leans a little bit to SMU in this one. I just like the matchup. I think Penn State wants to mash you, wants to grind you. They'll do a bunch of different things offensively, and Tyler Warren's a tough matchup. But if SMU has to play this straight up with their depth that they have on the defensive line to rotate against a Penn State offensive line that, quite honestly, has been up and down this year, are they going to be the group that played Oregon, or are they going to be the group that, kind of messed around with their food a lot this year offensively? And SMU's got some players that are motivated, coming off a loss in the ACC championship game. I still think that, plays a factor here. It's different than, what Penn State went through against the number one team in the country. SMU lost to a Clemson team that was in the top 25, hoping to shock the world and make the college football playoff. Very, very different situations. For SMU, they're going in there now like, okay, we can start fast. We can make some plays early, make them chase us, which I think they can. We'll come out on the right side of this if we continue to do that throughout the course of the game. Whereas Penn State, first sign of something going wrong, I mean, yeah, they battled in that game against Oregon, but it's a big game. Doesn't that creep back in? So early leaning, I like SMU by 4.
You're right about Charlotte, though. Always nasty, always muggy. We need to move that thing back to Tampa like it was for the 1 year that renovations were happening, and I'll be a lot happier if we can get ACC championships back down here in some sunshine. So, or good weather. I guess it's a late night game. So, Billy, where can people follow you, man? Where can they find your work for all things SMU this week?
Yeah, check us out at ontheponyexpress.com, and you can sign up for just $1 for your first 7 days.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy, for hanging out.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.